On Hoosier Ag Today, we are joined by Kirby Bacon, a technical agronomist with DeKalb Asgrow. Lots to talk about in the year of 2017. Seems like that's the story every year anymore, Kirby. But we've had a lot of issues, a lot of rain here in Indiana, and it looks like maybe that's about to shut off, maybe for an extended period of time, along with a big warm-up. First of all, just take a look around your area and tell us some of the different things that you're seeing as far as crop development.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It's we've certainly had a very, very broad range of circumstances. Again, as you mentioned, the amount of precipitation, our ability to monitor how much precip we get is better than it ever has been before. We've got better ways to monitor that and see how much is arriving where specifically. And we've certainly had some records set this year in some isolated locations for amount of precipitation. And so along with that came what I would say is some unprecedented amounts of replant in our part of the state. And then we also got into a situation where we even had a chance to replant some of the replant. So as very, very challenging from trying to get a stand established this year. And then along with that, we had some really cool conditions that contributed to a problem that we call seedling blight. So again, the key to our process here was really trying to establish a stand and get a good quality number of plants out there going in the field, and that was tough, but we've made progress, and I think we're a little further down the road now. And if we continue to get some precept going forward, I think we've still got good potential in this crop.
Meanwhile, growers obviously need to be on the lookout for disease and also keep an eye out for weeds, any that may pop up that they haven't already taken care of, and pests. What kinds of issues are particularly of concern to you this year?
Yeah, the very first thing that I'm concerned about is populations and stand counts out there, Andy. We if you don't have the number of plants on the acre to support your yield target, then there's very little you can do to help resolve that issue other than to be aware and to prepare. So to your point, I recommend that folks get out, do a really good job of scouting and observing the populations and stand counts that they have in their fields, particularly the problem fields. This year, one of the tough parts is a lot of our more productive acres, maybe some of the lower ground, higher productive type acres suffered from an awful lot of saturation, and it lowered our stand count. So I think it's important to know what our populations are out there. And in addition to that, while you're scouting, of course, that's a great time to pick up those ideas about, how much weed pressure you have in those low areas of the field where you have a reduced stand count in your population. Good chance you won't have as good a canopy, so therefore you can have some weed breaks in those areas. So I'm absolutely a huge proponent of getting out there, doing those stand counts, seeing what that population wound up being, and then making sure that we've got good weed control in places where our population isn't as dense.
And as far as ROI, it sounds like maybe some of those really troubled areas are going to be areas that maybe there's not a lot of dollars spent on going forward.
I think that's a fair assessment. There does come a time where it's not to anybody's advantage from a net income perspective to put any more dollars into that. However, I will say, that's why the scouting piece is so important. We knew at one point this spring what we thought our populations looked like in that field. And by getting out there again now and making sure what we've got, then we can determine where those breakover points are in terms of further investment. There's a real good chance you could go out and find that, hey, I've got good population here. Plants are reasonably healthy. Scout them for leaf tissue disease problems, whether or not we might have some issues popping up there, and then make that determination as to whether or not further investment in a fungicide application or potentially an insecticide application might be in the best interest from a net income perspective. I think if you've got a good population to work with, we've certainly got that in a lot of fields, then we need to invest in that and make sure we take care of it all the way to the end.
We know 2010 was a really tough year with drought, but this year Indiana continues to lag behind in the quality, the condition of both the corn and soybean crops, lag way behind at the tail end of the 18-state area that makes up the bulk of the corn and soybean growing states in the country. Have you ever seen it this bad in this state?
Unfortunately, I've had to use the term unprecedented several times this year. I've got a lot of folks give me a hard time for that. Again, we were so challenged in our attempts to effectively establish a high quality stand count, and that it created a difficulty that has a very, very long tail. Now, again, the good news is we've been able to navigate. I think things have improved. The crop has improved. Those plants that we have out there, the conditions in a lot of places, other than those areas that are drowned out, have improved to the point where we've gotten the right amounts of rainfall at the right time. So I actually feel a little bit better about most of the circumstances that we have out there than I did earlier on. A lot of these plants that had seedling blight issues early on have recovered reasonably well because we haven't gone through that, extended dry period. So we're improving a little bit. Things are getting a little better in some of those areas. And I will also mention that maybe to the further north, as we get a little closer up toward Michigan, we've got a lot of those sandier soil types that move a lot of water through a soil profile very quickly. We do have some areas in that part of the state, I think, that look as good as they ever have. So I'm very encouraged to say that despite the fact that we've got some real challenges in some of our productive areas, we've also got some areas that are looking as good or better than they have in the past.
All right. As always, some good information and observations from Kirby Bacon, Asgrow DeKalb technical agronomist. Really almost an unprecedented interview, but I'm not going to go that far, Kirby. Sorry. Have a great week.
Thank you very much.
Again, Kirby Bacon joining us here on Hoosier Ag Today. I'm Andy Eubank.